So as we advance through the Battle of Onderon, we're about to see the Separatists deploy for the first time a new piece of military hardware, the HMP Gunship, which is more or less the Separatist counter to the low-altitude assault ship utilized by the Republic, the LAAT. But this brings up a significant question. What have the Separatists been using for close air support up until this point? So I figured today we could take a closer look at what Separatist close air support looked like during the first half of the war. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So, to understand this, we have to first look at how the Republic used their gunship, the LAAT-I. The LAAT was primarily used for infantry support and transport roles. It was most notable for its ability to transport significant numbers of clone troopers around the battlefield to very specific points, but it also could provide close air support and combat support to troops on the ground, including low-altitude passes with heavy blaster cannons, delivering high explosive missiles to targets, and doing sweeps with sustained beam weapons. This did a remarkable job at clearing out landing zones and supporting infantry that found themselves in rather tricky spots. Now, it's noteworthy that for the first half of the war, the Separatists basically had no counter, instead relying a lot more on ground forces to fill this role. For example, in the transport role that the LAAT is very significantly known for, the Separatists relied on heavy ground transports like the Multi-Troop Transport, or MTT, to move large numbers of battle droids around the battlefield. And, well, this was effective at moving large numbers of troops, way more than you could fit in a single LAAT, by the way. It was slower and less precise, and had a harder time traversing challenging terrain. That being said, for the MTT's credit, it was far more well-armored than an aircraft could possibly be, but that's beside the point. For moving troops via the air, or from orbit to the surface of a planet, they would rely on much larger landing craft, like the C-9979, that was a heritage landing craft used by the Trade Federation before the formation of the CIS. Now, the C-9979 is once again far more capable at carrying much larger numbers of troops, but is significantly larger and needs a much larger landing zone for it to be able to operate in an area, sort of denying it some of the tactical flexibility that a gunship like an LAAT provides. But the other notable role that the LAAT provides, other than troop transport, is close air support, flying in and being able to deliver weapons fire to designated targets at a relatively close range situation and in a relatively accurate manner. So how did the Separatists do this? Now, obviously they had a plethora of ground vehicles, although they did lean a lot on the Armored Assault Tank, or AAT. They also had a significant air force that did carry out some similar roles, albeit not as direct. Most notably, they used things like vulture droids. The Separatists relied a lot on their vulture droids very early on in the conflict, using vulture droids to carry out, of course, air superiority missions where they would engage Republic fighters, but they also used vulture droids in close air support missions where they would fly in and do strafing runs and occasionally even drop heavier munitions like missiles, for example, on key targets. But unlike the LAAT, which has the ability to hover and attack a target at a close range that way, the vulture droids appear to have to generally maintain some momentum, and likely, if they were capable of hovering, would not be very accurate at it, and not really good enough at it to use their hovering positions as a stable firing platform. As such, the vulture droid is likely no more capable than any other starfighter at providing close air support to infantry in very tricky situations. The other vehicle they had that would be able to provide this kind of support, albeit on a much larger scale, was the Hyena bomber, which served as their mainstay bomber force. The Hyenas could sweep in and drop large numbers of proton bombs or other air-to-ground munitions, albeit from a higher altitude, a moving state, and in a much more destructive fashion. That being said, both of these spacecraft have equivalents in the Republic that aren't the LAAT. The Vulture droid is equivalent to the V-19 Torrent or other light Republic starfighters present at the beginning of the conflict, and the Hyena bomber is really a direct counter to the Republic Y-Wing. But these two aircraft also would be the best the Separatists had up until this point for fulfilling their close air support roles. That being said, the Separatists clearly had begun work on a gunship either right before the start of the war or right after the start of the war, and by this point, more than a year into the conflict, they were deploying the first of their HMP gunships, which would play crucial roles in battles going forward. The HMP would more or less fill the role that the LAAT filled within the Republic, albeit its carrying capacity was significantly limited. Its close air support abilities made up for that lack, being able to lay down withering fire against Republic troops, and being quite a shock when they appeared on the battlefield for the first time. It's also worth noting that the HMP did make some improvements over the Republic gunships, most notably adding heavier shielding to protect them against incoming munitions, which made them particularly hard to kill. So, all in all, the development and deployment of the HMP gunship represents a significant shift in the Separatist military's capabilities on the battlefield, and is a pretty big technological step for the CIS in their efforts to match the Republic's military capability. And the HMP gunship was first seen during the fighting on Onderon. In fact, it's kind of interesting that the first time this very advanced piece of military technology was used on the battlefield was during a civil war in which the Separatists supported one of the warring factions. If you want to learn more about this civil war, the Onderanian Civil War, I'll leave a link up here to my video on the start of the Onderanian Civil War and what led to the ongoing battle on Onderon. And I'd like you to let me know down in the comments whether you think the Vulture droids and Hyena bombers working together could really match the capabilities of something like an LAAT, or do you think the Separatists did desperately need a gunship to counter the Republic gunships? And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Star Wars, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.